Okay, well, back to our second part of the disinfection video. So in this part of the disinfection video, we're going to speak about chloramines, ozone, and we're going to do a quick review. All right, so previously, on the previous slide, you may remember that we discussed that the EPA had put out a disinfection byproduct rule, and there was also the situation shortly a few years before that with the cryptosporidium outbreak in Milwaukee that inspired a lot of utilities around the country to explore new disinfection methods. So a lot of drinking water plants in the United States get their water treated, and they choose to treat it with chloramines. At least 20% of Americans get their water treated with chloramines. And these are good in that they reduce the amount of disinfection byproducts. However, they do have a problem with pipe corrosion. So we're going to discuss pipe corrosion here in another video about Flint. But chloramine is blamed for pipe corrosion and elevated lead levels. Now, is it the chloramine that's causing the lead? So free chlorine actually, versus using chloramines, getting to where you have a lot of free chlorine, it acted as a good anti-corrosion agent. And when you don't have free chlorine, apparently chloramines made the water more corrosive. And that meant we need some sort of anti-corrosion agent. And there's a variety of phosphate-like chemicals that can be added to drinking water, zinc orthophosphate being one, where they're not associated with adverse health effects, and they help coat the interior of the pipe so that the pipe doesn't corrode away and the metals that are also in the pipe or on or around the pipe do not get into the drinking water. Dr. Mark Edwards, who was one of the doctors who blew the lid off of the Flint situation, actually first came to notoriety in the national press and in environmental kind of justice groups for his work in Washington, D.C., where they actually switched to chloramines to try to better comply with the disinfection rules. And the U.S. EPA encouraged that, and the U.S. EPA kind of was the oversight for Washington, D.C.'s water system as kind of a district versus a state. And EPA wanted this to work really well, and some of their elected or some of their appointed officials tried to hold back the true story about the corrosion that was going on, and a lot of people ended up with elevated lead levels in Washington, D.C., and Dr. Edwards from Virginia Tech, he's the one who pointed it out. All right, another chemical that can be used for disinfection is ozone. And ozone has been used for a long time, at least 100 years. But one problem with it is it doesn't stick around a long time. Good thing is it does a good job inactivating viruses, probably better than chlorine. It is an EPA-approved treatment. It also works with alum, or aluminum phosphate, aluminum polymers, and other compounds to people might use at the beginning. And it also can inactivate cryptosporidium and giardia. So that's why Milwaukee likes it. However, you do have to use a lot of electric and produce it on site. It's very corrosive to the pipes. It does not leave any residual. So we still have to add chlorine at the end. So why do we have to add chlorine at the end? Well, we keep chlorine in our distribution system for a variety of reasons. One reason is if there's any line breaks or anything breaks about the water line, when that repair is being done, in the immediate time before they catch it, there's still some residual chlorine to potentially disinfect anything that could have been infectious that got in the water. Sometimes sewer lines aren't far from our drinking water line, so a line break may allow a potential pathogen source into the water. So that's one reason. Another reason why we would add a disinfectant to the water and keep it in the water out in the distribution system is low levels of disinfection in the distribution system prevents the growth of biofilms. It's kind of these slimy bacteria that grow on the inside of pipes. And if there's an overgrowth of them, they may contribute to the degradation of the actual distribution system. And if there's an overgrowth of them, they may actually contribute to disinfection byproduct formation when chlorine does go through the drinking water system. So we like to have a constant amount of chlorine for protecting homeowners at the end of the pipe and for preventing the overgrowth of biofilm forming bacteria. Ozone goes away very quickly. There's no residual. It doesn't reside or stay in the water very long. So we have to add chlorine even if we have an ozone system. And then without anti-corrosion agents, ozone can really mess up the pipes where it does interact, particularly in that very early part. So there are other treatment methods that are out there for ozone. One, homeowners who want to ozonate their water, there's ozone generators that screw onto the tap. So that's just a little bit about ozone. Another option is UV treatment. This uses these lamps that are dropped down into the water. These UV lamps have UV light generated in these low pressure mercury lamps. The UV light destroys the DNA and RNA of viruses, bacteria, protozoa. And some people believe that these are the way of the future, and they're used all around the world, but we need the water to be very clear before it interacts with it. And again, like ozone, UV does not leave a residual, so we still have to add a little bit of chlorine at the end. And these do require a good bit of power, and we do use them currently even in Richmond at the Otter Creek wastewater plant. The sweet spot for UV radiation, peak germicidal activity, is in this range of the UV. This is the germicidal range. 264 nanometers is kind of the optimal, but anything around it is really good at penetrating into the actual target organism. So UV, it's a DNA virus or a bacteria that's got DNA. It penetrates into the cell, penetrates that virus, and it causes these strand breaks, which then prevents replication and usually immediate death or deactivation. So these review questions will be questions that will probably just be on your quiz. So we'll speak more to them for you guys doing your quiz, or they'll just be right on your exam because we're at the time where we've got to do the examination. So I'll stop this video here and we'll go into discussing a little bit again about the Washington, D.C. situation, but the situation with Flint, Michigan.